Now I think that given the content of the glassware, I think they all are going to work particularly well with any type of filters, as long as we're just a little bit careful. We've already looked at the flood filter that works particularly well. Let's take a look at one of the Topaz impression filters, because when I went down the list of these, I found there were quite a few that I liked the look of. So let's go to our layers to start with, because I don't want to apply my filter to this particular layer. I want to apply my filter at least to a second layer. Some filter software does create a second layer, but if you hit Ctrl J, well, you can always start off with a layer to filter, knowing you've got the original sitting beneath. This image is a full-size image. This is straight from a 20 megapixel camera. Manipulation done in Camera Raw, but we're ready to go. So let's go to our filters menu here, down to Topaz Labs, and Topaz Impression 2 is what I'm looking for. Just takes a few seconds to boot up on screen, and it's telling me that there's some updates available. No, I'll come back and get them sometime later. Thank you very much. Now I gave the thumbnails down the right hand side just a little time there to draw. Remember, if you're going to apply filters to a 20 megapixel camera, you need to give it a little time to work. We are asking the software to do an enormous amount. Now if I select one of these, let me select Crown Scratch, you can see that it just takes a few seconds to apply. But as we go down the options here, let's move on to Fabric Weave. Almost all of them would either work pretty well just as they are, or certainly work pretty well if we amalgamated them with the unfiltered version we've got sitting in layers. This one looks a little bit way out, but let's take a quick look. You can see the blue bar along the top of the screen just takes a little while to draw. That one I don't think is quite so successful. Now I'm going to skip the rest because we could take all day to do this. I want to go down to one called Turner Storm, because I looked at that yesterday and it took my interest, and I can't seem to find it, so it must be in amongst one of the others. Let's have a look at looking at the painting versions. It must be in here. You can see it takes a few seconds for these to draw themselves. There's the Turner Storms that I was looking for. So let's select the first one and just give it a chance to apply to the image. And I quite like the look of that when it came up. Let's try Turner Storms 2. Not a great deal of difference. Turner Storms, Turner Sunset. No, I think Turner Storms 1 is the one that appealed to me. So I'm going to click OK to apply this. Now when we do that, it's going to take a few seconds to apply. Normally it does. For some reason it seems to have worked remarkably quickly, given we're working on a 20 megapixel camera. But what we've got now is the benefit of an original layer sitting beneath. Because sometimes when we apply filters can destroy a little bit of detail that's important to the picture. So if we wanted to bring back a little bit of detail, then we can. I suppose one of the best examples here is that little bit of glass there. When the image is in its normal guise, so to speak, we can see it, but when we filter the image, it just looks like a smudge down there. So we've got the opportunity to either bring that back, or maybe a little bit later on just blot it out with the spot healing brush. But if I wanted to bring back a little bit of detail here with the broken glass, I can do that. And I think we've already demonstrated something like this with a layer mask, applying it to the filtered layer. Zooming in, remember with a mask we can always undo the mask, so there's no risk to what we're doing here. Pick up a brush, my flow rate, I'm going to drop it down to about 5%. Reduce the brush size, so if I wanted to, I've got the opportunity here just to bring back enough of that glass so that those who are viewing the picture can perhaps see that it is broken pieces of glass. But sometimes I find myself just bringing back the edges. Now this takes a little bit more care and effort, and I would make the image much bigger and I'd have a much smaller brush, but I would maybe work on the edge a little bit. And you hardly notice it in the filter, but it just makes a difference. It just holds in the edge. But a lot of what we do here is going to be personal. Let's say we're happy with this, and I'm going to go to my options at the top here, and I can choose flatten. Now of course I could just pick up my spot healing brush, because I think that's probably going to deal with that. I don't think that's helping very much. We've got a couple of drips of water down there which are not helping much either, but I suppose it's arguable whether we want to get rid of them. A lot of filters apply a little slithers of white and speckly bits around the edge. I don't like that. I don't want anything white around the edge. But now I can see my image. Maybe I would finish this off with just a little sponge saturate, 23%. Let me make my brush a bit bigger. Maybe I could just tease out a little bit of colour from within that main glass, which compositionally speaking is pretty nicely placed. Now I think these filters also work well with the glassware, but there is one thing to bear in mind when you're applying a filter. The best advice I can give is to create the image for the purpose you require it, then apply the filter. What I've done here is apply a filter to a high resolution image. Well, if I then wanted to reduce the size of the image, it doesn't always work so well when we do that. For example, if I was to apply a canvas weave to this picture, it's so high in resolution that the canvas weave actually doesn't hardly show at all. It would only show if we had the image printed at 24 inches across. Then we would see the weave. So if you're producing images for a slideshow, 1920 1080 or somewhere around that size, I think the best advice I can give is to get them to that size, then apply your filters.